Lee Yunso wakes up in a bunk bed and sees blood dripping from the top bunk where a girl lies dead. She freaks out and quickly exits the room. She comes across a swimming pool where another girl jumps into the pool, and everything changes from purple to red. Terrified, Yunso tries to run away, but encounters students who look like zombies. As she tries to escape again, someone hits her, jolting her awake from the nightmare. In reality, Yunso is on a school trip. The students are loudly playing a Mafia game, but the class bully demands silence so he can sleep. One student contemplates confronting the bully, but is advised against it. Meanwhile, Yunso can't stop staring at Kim Junhee, the boy she likes. Her friend, Oh Jung-won, teases her about sitting next to him next time and works on her laptop. The group finally arrives at the youth center. The teacher gets a call, but has a weak signal, so he wanders off to find a better spot. The students unload their luggage and head inside. Yunso gets a weird sense of déjà vu, but Jongwon shrugs it off, saying all youth centers look the same. Inside, the students scan a QR code to connect to Wi-Fi and download the youth center app. After settling in, they start engaging in various activities, with one student filming the fun. Jongwon and Yunso sit off to the side, and Jongwon criticizes the app, saying she could make a better one. The teacher, unable to reach the other teachers, asks Junhee, the class president, to make sure everyone heads to their rooms. He also tells Kim So-mi, the vice president, to remind students to keep their uniforms on until they take a group photo. Things take a turn when the students realize there's no signal on their phones. Suddenly, a loud ring followed by a blackout scares the students. Turns out, it was just one student trying to scare his friends. He starts telling a ghost story about a student who allegedly committed suicide at the youth center. Most of the group laughs it off, but Yunso looks genuinely freaked out. The scene shifts to the school bullies, who are up to their usual antics, picking on two students. Meanwhile, Jungwon and Yunso settle into their rooms. Just then, they get a message welcoming them to a Mafia game, complete with their roles. They can be civilians, doctors, police officers, or mafias. The game rules are simple. From 8 a.m. to midnight, the students will vote to figure out who the Mafia members are. At midnight, the person with the most votes gets executed. After that, everyone but the Mafia has to fall asleep, while the Mafia picks someone to take out before 6 a.m. The game ends when either team wipes out the other. Civilians, doctors, and police officers are all on the same side. The students treat the game as a fun activity and start casting their votes. They decide to vote for Ho Yul, the prankster from earlier. After voting, Yunso suddenly realizes she never signed up for this game and wonders how it's happening without any internet. They decide to check in with Junhee about the teacher's whereabouts, only to find out he still hasn't come back and there are no adults in sight. They check the offices, but discover that even the landlines are down. Suddenly, Yunso receives a message telling her to go to the pool. When she arrives, So-mi and her friends pretend to throw a birthday party. Then, without warning, So-mi pushes Yunso into the pool, and she nearly drowns. It's not that she can't swim. It just feels like some invisible force is dragging her down. Luckily, Junhee shows up just in time to save her. He takes Yunso to the infirmary and stays by her side until she wakes up. Yunso worries that Junhee might be traumatized again, as he had stopped swimming after a tragic event. So-mi pretends to apologize, and Yunso acts like everything is fine. The students gather in the hallway as an announcement plays, reminding them that voting will end soon. Everyone has already voted for Ho Yul. Suddenly, Ho Yul hears a loud ringing, drops to his knees, and starts banging his head. Some students rush to help, but it's no use. He stands up and starts smashing his head against the wall. In a shocking moment, he jumps out the window and falls to his death. Before the students can react, it's announced that Ho Yul was actually a civilian. Instantly, all the students fall asleep. The next morning, the students wake up in shock, still reeling from what happened. They get a message on their phones, and the announcer explains that last night, right before the voting ended, the police officer used their powers. They also learn that the Mafia executed one of their own, Ju-won. The students split into two teams. One searches for Ju-won's body in the toilet, while the other goes to the broadcasting room, only to find it empty. Yunso examines the scene around Ju-won and realizes he was killed recently. She starts to feel nauseated. Meanwhile, Kyung-jun turns to Junhee, insisting that as class president, he should take charge. Junhee suggests they leave the youth center and find help quickly. They head outside, and Junhee mentions seeing a gas station nearby and suggests they run there. Just as they're about to leave, an announcement stops them. They're told they have to play the game within the marked area. The students look down and realize the floor is lined with boundaries. One student, losing it, steps over the line. His friend tries to stop him, but accidentally crosses the line as well. In a horrifying twist, they both start banging their heads together. The rest of the students watch in horror, the reality of their situation hitting hard again. The announcer then reveals that their dead friends were civilians, which means the game is still on. After witnessing the brutal deaths of their classmates, the remaining students head back inside. Yunso quickly heads to the rooftop to look for a signal, with Jongwon and Junhee following her. Meanwhile, Kyungjun sees this as his chance to grab the keys sitting on a table, giving him access to multiple rooms in the building. On the rooftop, Yunso realizes that the white line they saw earlier marks the boundaries for where the game is supposed to be played. From up high, they spot the line stretching away from the building and into the forest. They head back down to share their discoveries with the others. The group decides some of them should check out where the trail leads. After some discussion, Junhee, Somi, Nahi, Hyunho, and another student volunteer to go. As they say their goodbyes, Yunso thinks she hears someone calling her name, but no one is around. On the way up the trail, Nahi gets hurt but insists on continuing with the group. Meanwhile, Kyungjun and his friends discover the snack bar and decide to keep it for themselves. Yunso recruits a few students to help her put the dead bodies in the freezers. As she snaps photos of the scene, she wonders why the Mafia would kill Juwon if he was on their side. After dealing with the bodies, they start to question how their phones still have battery when they never charged them. As they're leaving, Yunso hears a strange noise and feels compelled to check it out. She follows the sound to the basement and gets the eerie feeling that a ghost is right behind her. She hears a door open and moves towards it, discovering what looks like an office. She tries to use the landline, but it's dead. However, as soon as she steps out of the room, the computers turn, revealing CCTV footage from different areas of the building. Back in her room, Yunso finds Jongwon trying to hack into the game's code, but her efforts hit a wall. Jongwon mentions that the phones of the dead students won't work or charge. Yunso wonders if the phone dies along with its owner, asking Jongwon if she's noticed anything weird. Jongwon shrugs it off, saying everything has been strange lately. Yunso confides that she thinks she saw a ghost, but Jongwon laughs it off, telling her not to worry. Meanwhile, the volunteers reach the end of the line and notice something unsettling. The people they saw from a distance aren't moving, neither are the seagulls. Somi and another student decide to get a closer look since they can't see where the line ends. But when the other student slips, it looks like Somi pushes him instead of helping him up. He crosses the line and is immediately executed, taking his own life right there. The volunteer students return to the youth center and are immediately questioned about the death of the other student. Somi jumps in to clarify the situation, while Junhee tells everyone there's no way out of this mess. After the meeting, Yunso feels overwhelmed with guilt, knowing it was her idea to explore the boundary lines. Jongwon urges her to pull herself together and focus on finding a way out instead. As they head to the office, they run into Da-Bom. Kyungjun is calling him over, and despite their attempts to convince him to back off, Da-Bom is determined to go. Junhee is in the office, where the phones keep ringing. Eventually, he realizes it's all an illusion. The phones were cut off a while ago. Yunso and Jongwon overhear him losing control and rush in to see what's going on. He tells them that everything is fake, from the ringing phones to the files scattered around the office. Meanwhile, Kyungjun asks Da-Bom to explain how the game works. Da-Bom explains that each player only knows their own role, and it's all about luck and smart thinking to figure out who the Mafia is. Kyungjun snatches his phone to see if he can vote from it, but fortunately, you can only vote from your own device. Nahi is getting some comfort from Hyunho, who's tending to her wound. They promise to survive together and even joke about having a crush on each other. As the students split into groups to better understand the game, tensions rise. Somi's group starts accusing each other, and suspicion spreads. Yunso, Jongwon, and Junhee decide they should ask the others not to vote at all, hoping to avoid any more deaths. Before they can make their case, they rush to rescue Da-Bom from Kyungjun, leading to a fight. Hyunho takes down Kyungjun and his friends, Yunso convinces Kyungjun, urging him to stop being a jerk and join everyone in the auditorium. Once all the students gather, Junhee suggests they skip the voting, and Kyungjun orders everyone to toss their phones in a trash bin. Some students are completely against the idea, but the majority goes along with it. They toss their phones, but Kyungjun secretly holds on to his. Just then, an announcement blares, reminding everyone they have 1 minute to vote, but the group decides to leave it to chance. For a moment after midnight, nothing happens, and the students begin celebrating, thinking they've won. But then an alarm blares, and the announcer begins randomly executing people, sending everyone into a frenzy as they scramble to grab their phones and vote. In the chaos, Yunso tries to help Junhee, who is having a panic attack. Suddenly, a student pulls out some electric wires, causing her own execution and plunging the place into darkness. The students fumble around, desperately searching for their phones to cast their votes. Unfortunately, the announcer keeps calling out names, and one by one, the students commit suicide. The students struggle to figure out who to vote for. Somi votes for the girl she had an argument with earlier, and the others follow her lead. Even though the girl votes for Somi in return, it's too late to make a difference. Yunso tries to rally the remaining students to split their votes and save her, but it's a done deal. Meanwhile, Kyungjun spots Hyunho's phone and tosses it away. Unable to find his phone, Hyunho tragically hangs himself. When the voting ends, that girl gets the most votes and explodes with anger, lashing out at everyone for siding with Somi. She storms off to execute herself. At this point, most of the civilians are dead, and they still haven't identified a single Mafia member. The remaining students eventually fall asleep. The next morning, Yunso wakes up from a nightmare about someone being strangled. As the students gather, they find Hyunho's body still hanging in the auditorium, and they quickly realize Ju-young is also dead, strangled by the Mafia during the night. The announcer informs them that Ju-young was a civilian, and adds that the doctor used their healing ability just before the last vote to save Cha Yu-jun. The students blame Junhee for advising them not to vote, and demand he take responsibility. Junhee apologizes and walks away, feeling defeated. Junhee contemplates leaving the designated area and considers ending his life, but ultimately decides against it. Meanwhile, the students argue about who is to blame. Jungwon points the finger at Kyungjun, but he quickly deflects, saying he was smart enough not to trust Junhee and hand over his phone. Yunso steps in and urges them to stop fighting. She insists they just need to find the game's creator, and they can all walk out of here safely. Later, Yunso asks Junhee to stop beating himself up and focus on finding the person behind the game. Once again, she ends up alone in the freezer and suddenly hears a strange noise. As she investigates, she spots a small opening in the wall and sees a ghost coming toward her. She screams, which alarms the other students. They rush in, thinking she's having an asthma attack, and quickly give her an inhaler before she passes out. When Yunso wakes up, she finds herself in the infirmary with Na-hee. Na-hee explains what happened, but she's clearly struggling with the loss of Hyunho, and it's starting to wear on her mentally. Meanwhile, the other students are discussing the game and float the idea of coming clean about their roles. But no one takes the bait. Kyungjun suggests that Junhee might be the Mafia, given how many civilians died last night. Somi counters that even Mafias ended up dead after following Junhee's advice. The focus then shifts to Cha Yu-jun's friends, with some students accusing them of being the doctors who saved him. Yu-jun's friends quickly deny those accusations. A student reminds everyone that Somi was the first to vote against the student who had exposed her earlier. Somi retaliates with accusations, adding to the confusion. The conversation shifts back to Kyungjun, questioning why he hid his phone. He blames Woo-ram for being too complacent and for Ju-young's death after getting rejected. Kyungjun is the first to vote for Woo-ram. Seeing Kyungjun vote for Woo-ram, his followers quickly jump on board. Junhee tries to urge the others to stay and discuss things further, but they're not interested and start to leave. Kyungjun thinks it could be dangerous to just hang out with the three of them, so they set out to recruit more people, tempting them with snacks from the snack bar. Soon enough, more students start casting their votes for Woo-ram. As midnight approaches, Woo-ram urges the others to vote against Kyungjun. He warns that it's only a matter of time before Kyungjun turns on them. Junhee and his friends decide to vote for Kyungjun. The clock ticks down, and Jisoo and Yoo-jun are the last to cast their votes. Woo-ram rushes off to find them, trying to convince them to save him. Yunso shows Jongwon and Na-hee the opening in the wall she discovered earlier and decides to investigate it again. This time, she trips and tumbles through the opening. She discovers a room full of computers monitoring the students. She then finds herself on another floor where everything looks identical, almost like the Twilight Zone. She hears a phone ringing in one of the rooms and rushes to answer it. As soon as she steps inside, the door locks behind her. Trapped, she begins exploring the room and stumbles upon a photo album filled with pictures from all the schools that have visited the center. To her shock, she spots a photo of her own class. But how was it taken? They never posed for it. The strangest part is that all the students' faces are obscured, except for one girl whom Yunso doesn't recognize. She takes the picture and notices a wall opening that leads her out of the room. Meanwhile, Jongwon and Na-hee grow anxious, waiting for Yunso to return. Jongwon decides to go check on her, but ends up hitting a dead end. Back in the main area, the voting tension is heating up. Woo-ram has racked up 7 votes, while Kyungjun is close behind with 6. Realizing he might be next to go, Kyungjun starts to panic. Somi, Junhee, and Woo-ram try to convince Jisoo and Yoojun to vote for Kyungjun. Jisoo stands firm, refusing to be pressured and asking for more time to think it over. Woo-ram loses his cool, and Junhee steps outside to talk to him, suggesting that he cool off in his room while they sort things out. Somi stays behind to persuade Jisoo and Yoojun, but it's no use. Jisoo even throws out the accusation that Somi might be a Mafia herself. Kyungjun convinces Mina to help him reach Woo-ram, hinting that they've worked together before. Mina tricks Woo-ram into meeting Kyungjun alone, where Kyungjun's gang captures and tortures him. Mina stays with Jisoo and Yoojun to ensure they vote for Woo-ram. Junhee and Somi search for Woo-ram, but find his room empty and frantically search the center. Jongwon returns to Na-hee and says she couldn't find Yunso. Just as they're about to leave, Yunso shows up, sharing what she's discovered. Jongwon is a bit skeptical until Yunso pulls out the photo she took. Yunso is convinced that the girl in the picture is a ghost. As they chat, Junhee bursts in, asking if they've seen Woo-ram. They all decide to help search for him, and they're alarmed when they hear him announce over the speaker that he's Mafia. They rush to save him, but it's too late. Jisoo and Yoojun have already voted for Woo-ram. Junhee uses an axe to break down the door and rescue Woo-ram. But as they're leaving, the students get a message that voting has ended. Woo-ram realizes he's received the most votes, and in a fit of rage turns on Kyungjun, grabbing the axe. He's about to strike when the announcer declares him the next to be executed. In a frantic moment, Woo-ram uses the axe on himself. The announcer confirms Woo-ram was a Mafia. A flashback reveals Woo-ram killing a student, leaving Yunso devastated. Kyungjun, however, is satisfied. The students go to their hiding spots. Junhee and Jongwon take Yunso to safety and lock the door behind them. Afterward, the students fall asleep. The next morning, the students wake up and Yunso is still shaken by the revelation that Woo-ram was a Mafia. They hear an announcement that the police used their skill and Jisoo has been killed by the Mafia. Jongwon feels hopeless and wonders if they'll ever escape the youth center alive. Yunso tries to stay positive, assuring her that they'll figure things out. As they leave their hiding spots, they find Yoojun grieving for Jisoo. Not long after, Kyungjun calls everyone to an impromptu meeting. He's feeling pretty proud of himself for figuring out that Woo-ram was a Mafia. Now, he declares he'll take charge of identifying the Mafia going forward. He wants everyone to share their suspicions, and he will choose the person he thinks is most likely guilty. Of course, some students push back, questioning who he thinks he is. He accuses Junhee, Somi, Yunso, and Jongwon of being Mafia for trying to save Woo-ram. They deny the accusations and attempt to prove their innocence. Jongwon points out that Jisoo and Yoojun were locked in a room overnight. Somi suggests that Yoojun might have killed Jisoo to survive. Mina wonders why the police didn't use their skills to save Jisoo. Ultimately, Kyungjun fixates on Junhee, declaring him the Mafia. Yunso tries to defend him, but Kyungjun continues to press the accusations. In a panic, Yunso mentions her discovery of the CCTV room and suggests they check the footage for clues. But when they look, they find that someone deleted the recordings from the previous day. Kyungjun accuses Yunso of trying to trick them. He and his group decide to vote for her. Yunso pleads with the others to hold off on voting until she can prove her innocence. Jongwon promises to get the files before 11 p.m. The group breaks up, and Mina, Somi, and Nahi head to the infirmary. While they're there, Somi suggests they vote for Yunso too. Nahi argues that would make them murderers if Yunso turns out to be a civilian. She also points out that Somi has always had it out for Yunso and seems to want to take advantage of the situation. They start to bicker, and Somi accuses Nahi of being Mafia just because she's been hanging out with Yunso and Jongwon. Mina steps in, sensing the argument is getting heated. Meanwhile, Jongwon explains to Junhee and Yunso that she can only retrieve a few files from yesterday. She plans to get the files from right before Jisoo was killed. Meanwhile, Yunso shows Junhee the hidden entrance in the freezer and the picture she found. She asks him to trust her, and he reassures her that he does. They go inside to check again. While searching, Yunso asks Junhee what he'd do if she turned out to be a Mafia. He replies it wouldn't matter. He'd never vote against her. They go to the roof for fresh air, and Yunso confesses that she just wants to live. Junhee encourages her, suggesting they find more evidence against the Mafia. They investigate Jisoo's room using a UV light to see if they can piece together what happened. They figure out that someone used an axe to break down the door. Unfortunately, the UV light can't help them trace the Mafia, since many of the students, including Yunso, have blood on them. Just as they are talking, they receive a notification that the footage has been retrieved. All the students gather to watch the footage, only to be shocked by what looks like a ghost appearing on the screen. The footage is shaky, and suddenly, the hard drive catches fire. They quickly put out the fire, and Yunso insists she saw the same ghost in her picture. She shows it to everyone, and points out that the ghost is in the far corner. Yunso urges them to believe her, and suggests they focus on finding the game's creator, instead of turning on each other. Naturally, the students are even more confused, so they decide to head to the pool, where the ghost was seen in the video. Junhee proposes they try a new voting strategy since time is running out. Since Yunso already has 4 votes, they should nominate someone else and spread out the remaining votes. He argues that if no one gets the most votes, they might survive. He volunteers himself, and they agree to spread the votes evenly. After the voting ends, the announcer falls silent, and for a moment, the students believe their plan worked. But their relief is short-lived. The announcer states Yunso and Junhee are tied, and the students have 5 minutes to vote on who will be executed. The lights go out and chaos erupts as an alarm blares. Somi quickly votes Yunso, urging the others to join her. She snatches the picture from Yunso's hands and tears it apart. Jongwon tries to reason with the group, pleading with them not to vote for Yunso. Meanwhile, Junhee is hit with flashbacks of all the loved ones he's lost right before his eyes. In a moment of sacrifice, he decides to take the fall to save Yunso and admits he's a Mafia. The remaining students start voting for him. Somi pleads with him to stop and tries to save him. Yunso, in tears, refuses to leave his side. As the votes are counted, the students start fleeing for safety. Jongwon and another student drag Yunso away from Junhee. Junhee then falls into the pool. A flashback reveals that on the first night, Mafia members were given their rules and had to decide who to kill, or one of them would be killed. This is what happened to Juwon. Somi then is seen killing Jisoo the night before. Back in the present, the announcer steps in just in time to stop Somi from attacking Yunso, reminding her of the game rules. Even though Somi blames Yunso for Junhee's death, she has no choice but to hold off on her violent plans. The next morning, the students wake up, and Yunso heads straight to the swimming pool. There, she finds Junhee floating in the water. She pulls him out and hugs him tightly, confessing her feelings. To everyone's surprise, the announcer reveals that the doctor healed Junhee, bringing him back to life. Yunso is overjoyed, and they embrace each other. Meanwhile, Eun-chan and Yeon-woo stumble upon Jinha scrubbing a bloody shirt in the bathroom. They ask him what's going on, but before he can respond, the announcer states that Shin Sang-bin was killed by the Mafia last night. Nahi screams after discovering Sang-bin's bloody body. The shock brings everyone together, and they quickly turn their suspicions toward Jinha, who insists he's innocent. While all this is happening, Yunso is busy snapping pictures and examining the scene. She tells Jongwon that Sang-bin was stabbed multiple times, way more viciously than usual. Yunso notes that the brutality of the attack suggests the Mafia had a serious grudge against Sang-bin. Over with the students, Jinha pleads with Kyungjun to back him up, desperate for someone to believe him. As they discuss Sang-bin's death, someone notices Junhee's name written on the wall. Junhee admits he lied about being a Mafia. Suspicion falls on Jinha, especially after Kyungjun abandons him. Jinha, enraged, attacks Kyungjun but is overpowered. Kyungjun moves to vote for Jinha, but Junhee jumps in to stop him. He warns that if Kyungjun keeps pushing his agenda without listening to the group, he'll be next in line for execution. Junhee suggests they regroup at 11 p.m. to figure out their voting strategy. The students scatter, and Junhee tells Somi not to frame anyone else to save him. He doesn't need her help and never asked for it. The other students are shocked by how quickly Kyungjun and his gang have turned on each other. Later, Junhee checks in on Yoojun, who's still reeling from losing his girlfriend. Afterward, he shows Yoonso some photos they took on their first outing, and she notices their faces look strangely static, just like the picture she found earlier. Intrigued, she leaves to dig deeper and spots a ghost. She also discovers a key and receives a text instructing her to find the game host. Her friends eventually find her, and she shares her findings, but Jongwon and the others are skeptical. Junhee, however, believes her and agrees with Jongwon that they should keep the key and the mission under wraps. They reason it's better not to raise suspicion and get accused of being Mafia, especially since Yoonso mentions the message about the mission disappeared after she read it. They agree to carry out the mission and use the key to find the game host. Meanwhile, Jinha follows Kyungjun, who is carrying a bag to the next building. Yoojun notices them and decides to follow. He overhears Kyungjun confessing to Jinha that he, too, was framed for Sungbin's murder. The tension escalates and the two start fighting. Their fight pauses when they realize Yoojun is eavesdropping. They quickly turn their aggression toward him, trying to tie him up, but Yoojun puts up a strong fight. During the struggle, Kyungjun accidentally shoves him, and he falls onto a brick, hitting his head hard. Kyungjun urges Jinha to help him finish off Yoojun to keep their secret safe. They brutally hit him with the brick multiple times before leaving him for dead. In a flashback, we learn that Yoojun was a doctor who saved Junhee. He also wanted to save his girlfriend, but that didn't work out because there is a cooling period before he can use his healing skills again. Meanwhile, Yoonso and Junhee are on the hunt for the photo album to gather evidence. Suddenly, the announcer delivers shocking news. Yoojun is dead, and he was a doctor. The students are thrown into a panic, realizing someone has been killed in broad daylight. Yoonso quickly deduces that Yoojun wasn't killed by the Mafia. As she analyzes the area and snaps photos, Jongwon joins her investigation. They uncover a hidden bloody brick, a footprint, and a piece of a shoe sole. Eun-chan spots a message scrawled on the wall, allegedly from the police, naming Junhee and Da Bom as Mafias. This revelation stirs up a storm of suspicion. The students are eager to figure out Junhee's true role. When he arrives, he firmly claims he's not part of the Mafia. Yoonso supports him, suggesting the message could be a clever ruse to mislead them. Somi jumps in, accusing Yoonso of writing the message, questioning her tardiness to the meeting. But Jongwon quickly defends her best friend. Kyungjun rips down the announcement and tears it apart, demanding that everyone reveal their identities in the game by showing their messages. But Yoonso steps in, saying there's no need for that. She's figured out who killed Yoojun. Intrigued, the students follow her to a room where she shows them a picture of a footprint found at the crime scene, along with a piece of a shoe sole they discovered. Junhee explains that basketball players often use that type of shoe accessory. Suddenly, all eyes turn to Kyungjun and Jinha, who are both wearing sports shoes. Kyungjun quickly offers to show his shoes, but Jinha hesitates. The students grab him and check his shoes, revealing that the shoe sole accessory belongs to him. Jinha asks for forgiveness and accuses Kyungjun of being the real killer. During the chaos, Kyungjun accidentally mentions the brick, catching Yoonso and Jongwon's attention, something they hadn't even brought up. The students realize Kyungjun was also involved in the murder. As Kyungjun and Jinha continue fighting, Junhee gets hurt trying to intervene, and Yoonso is pushed aside. Junhee's anger erupts, and he attacks Kyungjun. The situation calms down when more students step in. As things start to cool down, Kyungjun spots a marker that fell out of Jinha's pocket. He accuses Jinha of being the one who wrote the message on the wall, making the other students even more suspicious. Jinha insists he didn't do it, but it's not enough to convince them. In the end, the group decides to lock Jinha and Kyungjun in separate rooms and take away their phones. Junhee assures them they'll get their phones back before voting time. Somi tries to snag the keys to the snack bar, but Kyungjun claims he doesn't have them. Afterward, Somi and Mina ask Darbom to help them find the keys to the cafeteria, which they think is the safest spot since nothing can get through those shutters. Meanwhile, Yunso tends to Junhee's wounds, checking in to see if he's alright. After a sweet, tender moment, they head back to join the others. But before leaving the clinic, Yunso notices some povidone and starts to suspect it might have been used to write the message on the wall. The students gather for a meeting to discuss what to do next about Kyungjun and Jinha. Junhee argues that they should still be allowed to vote, and everyone agrees they'll return the phones around voting time. The conversation heats up as they debate who's more suspicious. Yunso expresses her unease about Yoojun's death, noting that the announcer usually says someone has been executed, but this time she simply stated that Yoojun is dead. After the meeting, the students hide out while Junhee goes to return Jinha's phone. Jinha begs for mercy, but Junhee reminds him he didn't show any to Yoojun. As Jinha realizes he's been voted out, Kyungjun feels a bit better. It turns out he's the one who actually wrote the message on the wall. Somi, Darbom and Mina confront him, demanding the keys to the cafeteria. They threaten him, and he reluctantly shows them where he stashed the keys. Darbom tricks Kyungjun into going to a room under the pretense of fetching his phone. With time running out, Kyungjun rushes inside, but Darbom locks him in. As expected, Kyungjun starts threatening him and tries to break down the door with a chair. After the voting wraps up, Jinha, who's a civilian, is executed. Somi and Mina hide in the cafeteria, but Darbom, who's actually a Mafia, has other plans for Kyungjun. He mocks him before Kyungjun starts beating him, but Kyungjun soon falls asleep. In a flashback, we see Darbom stabbing Sengbin multiple times. He cleverly removed his uniform and put on an apron to cover his tracks. After the murder, he gives Somi an axe and a bloody shirt to place outside Kyungjun's hiding spot to frame him. Right now, Darbom and Somi are having an argument about whether they should take out Kyungjun. Darbom thinks it's a must, since Kyungjun knows he's in the Mafia. Somi decides to back off and lets Darbom handle the dirty work. In the chaos of killing Kyungjun, Darbom forgets to grab his phone. The next morning, the students wake up to the shocking news of Kyungjun's death. Darbom sows doubt among Eun-chan and Yeonwoo by suggesting that Yunso is suspicious because the people she suspected are now dead, and she's always quick to move the bodies. Meanwhile, Somi tries to convince Nahi and Mina to vote against Yunso. Mina asks to speak privately and reveals her suspicion of Darbom. Somi tries to dismiss her concerns, arguing there's no proof. Meanwhile, Junhee, Yunso, and Jongwon are feeling the pressure, with only 9 of them left. Jongwon insists they have to find the Mafia, while Yunso hopes they can complete the host mission and finally end the game. They all agree they can't afford to lose another citizen, so they start searching for clues about the host. They stumble upon a drawer that won't open and decide they need tools to break it open. While gathering the tools, Junhee finds Kyungjun's phone and is puzzled about how it ended up there. He remembers giving it to Darbom with the plan for him to return it to Kyungjun when voting time came. Meanwhile, Yunso discovers a button that opens a mysterious door. Inside, she finds a small wooden locker and uses the key she was given to open it. Inside, there's a class photo, and she receives a message instructing her to check the name of the game host. The name Park Seon is revealed. Others also receive a message confirming Park Seon as the game host. They remember her as a classmate who committed suicide and hold a meeting to figure out how Park Seon is connected to the game, fearing the ghost Yunso mentioned might be Park Seon. Somi tries to blame Yunso, questioning what she knows about the game since she was close to Park Seon. Jongwon brings up a rumor that Park Seon didn't kill herself but was murdered. Somi looks flustered by this, and Yunso suggests that maybe Park Seon is out for revenge through the game. If she was really killed, then her killer has to be one of them, and they need to figure out who that is. As the students start brainstorming potential suspects, they wonder if the Mafias are involved. Woo-ram, in particular, had issues with Park Seon, leading them to speculate that the game might be a way to punish him. But they also question what the other Mafias could have done to Park Seon and who they might be. After the meeting, Somi and Nahi have a private conversation. Nahi tries to convince Somi to admit they bullied Park Seon and might be responsible for her death. Somi firmly denies any wrongdoing and tells Nahi to keep quiet. Later, Somi informs Darbom that Nahi might reveal the truth about Park Seon. Darbom responds by saying that Na-hee is Somi's problem since he has already eliminated everyone who knew about his involvement with Park San. Meanwhile, Junhee tells Yunso and Jongwon about his latest discovery. The three of them start digging for more evidence in the room, trying to piece together what really happened. Yunso begins to suspect they've fallen for the Mafia's tricks, especially since they voted Jinha out. Meanwhile, Mina starts to lose it as memories of Park San flood back. She fears that the ghost of vengeance is after them. Somi quickly shifts gears, bringing up Darbom as suspicious and even suggesting Na-hee might be involved. As night falls, Junhee questions Darbom about Kyungjun's phone. Darbom pretends not to know and claims he went to see Kyungjun with Somi. This raises more eyebrows towards Somi, especially since she has the keys to the cafeteria. Somi lies, saying she saw Kyungjun hiding the keys and insists she never did anything to Park San. But the more she denies it, the more they dig into the past. Unchan bluntly asks if she is the Mafia. Somi tells them to hold on and then reveals that she knows who started a rumor about a scandalous video involving Park Seon. Without hesitation, she votes for Na-hee, accusing her of distributing the video. Mina quickly follows her lead, and Na-hee insists she's innocent. The students are in shock, asking if the video really exists. Mina confirms it does. Na-hee lashes out at Somi, demanding her to come clean. But Somi stays cold and defiant, and the students look at Na-hee with suspicion. Na-hee demands that Somi take responsibility for her accusations. She declares herself as the police and reveals Somi as the Mafia. Mina immediately starts apologizing, saying Somi tricked her into this mess. Somi defends herself, but Unchan accuses her of being responsible for every murder since Wooram's death. Somi insists she had no choice and claims the game forced her to be a Mafia. She turns to Junhee for help, but he shuts her down. The students start voting for Somi, and in a desperate attempt to save herself, she tries to name the other Mafias. But then she starts bleeding from her mouth, and the announcer warns her to stop revealing identities. In the end, everyone votes for Somi, leaving her behind as they scramble to hide. Na-hee seeks Junhee's help and sets a trap for the Mafias, hoping it will help them find the remaining Mafias and protect themselves. She trusts Junhee because she knows he is not the Mafia. The next day, Na-hee's death is announced, leaving the students worried about their future without the police. They decide they need to find out what happened to Park Seon and why she died. In a flashback, we see Junhee rushing to save Park Seon, but it was too late. By the time he got there, she'd already jumped into the water. Junhee mentions he has evidence about who killed Na-hee. He reveals that he and Na-hee had set a trap to uncover the Mafia. He even shows a video they recorded where they used air freshener mixed with neon. The group starts checking their shoes, and they discover that Mina's shoe has neon paint on it. Mina starts begging and pleading her innocence, but Junhee is ready to vote her out immediately. Yunso steps in, feeling unconvinced that Mina is the Mafia. She asks everyone to calm down, arguing that the minimal amount of paint on Mina's shoe isn't enough evidence. If she had really killed Na-hee, there would be more. Yunso hangs back with Jongwon to investigate further. Jongwon surprisingly finds the exact spot where Na-hee hid and spots blood. They conclude that the Mafia must have been injured while killing Na-hee. Yunso reassures Junhee that they will find Na-hee's killer, but he is frustrated and wants to end the game and go home. Meanwhile, Mina tries to bribe Yeonwoo and Unchan with food, but they aren't having any of it. She begs them to save her, but they kick her out of their room. Running into Jongwon, Mina insists she's not hurt and claims they should be friends. In a last-ditch effort, she even hands Jongwon the cafeteria keys. Jongwon heads back to Junhee and Yunso, letting them know that Mina doesn't have any wounds. They all agree that the Mafia has been messing with them. Yunso suggests they set a trap, and Junhee quickly texts everyone, saying he found a hidden video camera that Na-hee set up before she died. He tells them it's charging and asks everyone to meet in 30 minutes. Darbom, reading the message, looks pretty shaken. He finds Yunso and asks where the camera is. She tells him it's charging in the cafeteria, and then walks away on purpose. Jongwon keeps an eye on Mina, still suspicious of her. They bump into Unchan in the hallway, who mentions that Yeonwoo went to the dispensary. Mina points out that when she hit Yeonwoo earlier, he flinched like it hurt. The group rushes to the dispensary, where they find Yeonwoo nursing a wound on his chest. Immediately, they suspect he got hurt while killing Na-hee, but he insists he's innocent. Meanwhile, Yunso and Junhee catch Da-Bom anxiously checking the video camera in the cafeteria. Everyone is curious about how Yeon-woo got that chest wound, piecing it together that it could have happened when he attacked Na-hee, who was hiding up in the ceiling. Hearing the commotion, Junhee, Yunso, and Da-Bom rush over to see what's going on. Junhee catches Da-Bom smirking as he watches Yeon-woo getting grilled by the others. Yunso and Junhee are suspicious of Da-Bom since they caught him trying to sneak a peek at the camera. He claims he was only checking that the camera was charging properly. But Junhee and Yunso aren't buying it. Yeon-woo explains that he doesn't know how he got his wound. He woke up with it. Yeon-woo votes for Da-Bom. Jungwon questions why Yeon-woo didn't mention his wound earlier when no one knew the Mafia was injured. Yeon-woo tries to defend himself by pointing out Mina as suspicious. He says Mina had Kyungjun's keys and everyone knew she didn't like Park Sen. Mina insists she's innocent and hits Yeon-woo right in his wound before voting for him. The blame game continues, with Da-Bom and Yeon-woo being the main targets. Yoon-chan starts doubting Yeon-woo. Yeon-woo wonders if Yoon-chan might be framing him since they were hiding together. Yoon-chan votes him out, believing Yeon-woo is Mafia for hiding his injury. Yeon-woo leaves in tears and heads to the snack bar. Meanwhile, the other students scatter to hide, and Junhee decides to follow Da-Bom. He tells Yunso it's safer for her to hide alone. Da-Bom makes a beeline for the second floor, checking where the other students are hiding. Meanwhile, Yunso realizes that Jongwon knew exactly where Na-hee had hidden, even without Junhee mentioning it. When she confronts her, Jongwon admits it all. She's part of the Mafia. Yunso is heartbroken and starts to cry, asking why. In a flashback, Jongwon is shown as the mastermind behind the Mafia operations. Yunso begs her to stop the madness and end the game, but before Jongwon can respond, Yunso falls asleep. Junhee confronts Da-Bom in the restroom after finding more evidence linking him to the Mafia. Da-Bom accuses Junhee of never stepping in when Kyungjun bullied him. He tells Junhee he's worse than Kyungjun for just standing by. Those words hit hard, and Junhee pleads with Da-Bom to spare Yunso and the others. Meanwhile, Mina hides out in the cafeteria and unexpectedly runs into Yeon-woo, who tries to attack her. Luckily for her, the execution starts just in time, and Yeon-woo goes into a trance. Sadly, he ends up choking to death, and the announcer reveals he was a citizen. Yoon-chan feels overwhelmed with guilt, but figures it's too late to save his friend, so he decides to stay put. Meanwhile, Mina finds a hiding spot in a restricted area of the snack bar. As night falls, Da-Bom tries to kill Junhee, but is reminded of the Mafia rules. He meets with Jongwon and feels slighted that she didn't inform him about the trap. They then agree to eliminate everyone left. Jongwon agrees to handle Junhee and Yunso, while Da-Bom takes care of the rest. He's skeptical about her ability of killing her own friends, but she insists it's the least she can do. He helps her put Yunso in the freezer, planning to leave her there to die. While Jongwon adjusts the freezer's temperature, Da-Bom steals Yunso's phone. Next, he goes after Yoon-chan, suffocating him. Then, he brutally kills Mina by smashing her head with a weight. He gets a message from Jongwon saying Junhee and Yunso are dead, but when he checks Yunso's phone, he sees it's still working. He asks Jongwon why she didn't finish off her friend. Just as he's about to stab Jongwon, an announcement blares, reminding everyone that mafias can't kill each other. Jongwon urges Da-Bom not to break the rules and sprays him with pepper spray, giving her the chance to escape and slam the door behind her. She tells Da-Bom to just wait it out for the next 30 minutes. Da-Bom stays in the freezer for a while, and the cold starts messing with his mind. He lashes out at what he thinks is Yunso's body, but is shocked to find out it's actually Na-hee. It turns out Jongwon hid Yunso somewhere else and didn't hurt Junhee at all. The next morning, Yunso and Junhee wake up. Yunso quickly finds Jongwon and confronts her. The betrayal hits hard, and Yunso wishes she could just disappear, but Jongwon brushes her off, saying she has to find Da-Bom, who's on the loose. Junhee gets angry at Jongwon, but Yunso steps in to stop him. Jongwon continues to search for Da-Bom, while Junhee argues they need to vote Da-Bom out and kill Jongwon to win the game. Yunso hesitates, but agrees to stay put. Yunso finds a gift box in her bag with a USB from Jongwon. The files on the USB reveal that Jongwon is not real, but a game character representing Park Se-en, Yunso's former best friend, with whom she used to exchange birthday gifts. Later, Junhee and Jongwon receive a message from Da-Bom telling them to come to the rooftop if they want to save Yunso. He must have caught her when she was in her room, probably thinking he was Junhee when she opened the door. On the rooftop, Da-bom orders Jongwon to jump to save Yunso. Jongwon asks for a guarantee that Da-bom won't harm the remaining 2 citizens. A fight breaks out as Yunso tries to escape. Junhee fights Da-bom, but is overpowered and hit with a stone. Meanwhile, Jongwon tries to help Yunso stand up. Just then, Da-bom lunges to stab Jongwon, but Yunso steps in and takes the hit instead. Junhee regains consciousness and fights Da-bom again, eventually killing him. Afterward, Yunso, hurt but conscious, confesses that she knows Jongwon's true identity and apologizes. She urges Jongwon to end the game and then passes out. In a shocking turn, Jongwon decides to jump to her death, which means the citizens win the game by default. When Yunso wakes up, she finds herself in a weird place that looks like a lab. To her horror, she sees the other students trapped in machines, still caught in the game. Suddenly, a man appears, warning her not to wake the others. The game was created by Park Se-in's parents after their daughter committed suicide. They blame the students for Park Se-in's death. A fake video made by Da-bom spread around the school, leading to Park Se-in's bullying. Yunso, realizing she didn't know about the video back then, feels a wave of regret. The parents want revenge and explain that the students have played the game many times before, but this is the first time Jongwon has helped them. Park Se-in's mom asks Yunso to find out how Jongwon managed to do that, since typically, the Mafias always win. Yunso pleads with Park Se-in's parents to stop, or at least let her take the blame so the others can go free. But they refuse, warning her that she's not fully awake and that fighting it will just make her sick. Just like that, Yunso passes out while begging for mercy, and they connect her to the machine. Park Se-in's parents erase the students' memories before each new game, to make them suffer with no hope of escape. However, Park Se-in's dad argues that Jongwon deliberately gave Yunso her memories to stop the game. Yunso returns to the game with her memories intact. As the students head toward the center, she tries to relax, no longer seeing Jongwon. But when she looks back at Kyungjun's gang, she spots Jongwon staring at her, causing Yunso to panic. And here this drama ends.